We all grew up with a lie. It was a comforting, orderly lie, printed in every textbook and hung on every bedroom wall. My very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas. That was the mnemonic, a neat family of 9, standing together against the infinite black: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The tiny icy sentinel guarding the edge of the dark. For nearly a century, that was the map of the known world. It was our cosmic identity, but maps are often just projections of what we want to see, not what is actually there. We wanted a complete story. We wanted the 9. But in the shadows, the math was already failing. In 2006, the 9th planet vanished. It didn't explode. It didn't drift away. It was exiled by a stroke of a pen, stripped of its crown by a room full of strangers in a city 1,000 miles from the telescopes that found it. But this crime didn't happen overnight. It was a slow-motion car crash that took decades to unfold. Today, we reopen the cold case of the 9th planet. We're looking for the evidence NASA found at the edge of the dark, the planet killer who took it all away, and the terrifying possibility that the real 9th planet is still out there, hiding behind a veil of gravity. The mystery begins with a ghost story. In the late 1800s, legendary astronomer Percival Lowell noticed something wrong with the math. Uranus and Neptune weren't where they were supposed to be. They were wobbling, shifting ever so slightly, as if something massive, something invisible, was tugging at them from the shadows. Lowell was a man obsessed. He was a wealthy Bostonian who had already claimed to see canals on Mars built by an ancient civilization, a claim that made him famous but also branded him a crackpot in the scientific community. To the academic elite, Lowell was a dreamer who saw what he wanted to see. Finding Planet X wasn't just about astronomy, it was his shot at ultimate scientific redemption. He calculated that this Planet X had to be a monster, a gas giant roughly 7 or 5 times the mass of Earth. He spent his fortune and his sanity chasing a ghost, convinced that this giant was hiding just beyond the reach of his lens. He died in 1916, with his maps unfinished and his Planet X still hidden in the dark. For 14 years, the search went cold. The Lowell Observatory was a tomb for a dream until, in 1930, the search fell to an unlikely hero, Clyde Tombaugh. Clyde was a 24-year-old farm boy from Kansas. He didn't have a PhD. He didn't have a fancy degree. What he had was a telescope he'd built out of old car parts and a cream separator, and the level of patience that would break most men. For months, Clyde spent his nights in a freezing observatory at 7,000 feet, exposing glass plates to the stars. The process was agonizing. He would take a photo of a tiny patch of sky, then wait several nights and take another. During the day, he sat at a blink comparator, a machine that flipped between the two images. It was the ultimate Where's Waldo. He examined over 2 million stars, one by one. If a dot stayed still, it was a star. If it moved, it was a planet. On February 18, 1930, his eyes caught a flicker, a tiny moving speck. The world went wild. Finally, Lowell's ghost had a body. But names carry power. Thousands of suggestions poured in. Atlas, Artemis, even Percival. But the winner came from an 11-year-old girl in Oxford, England, named Venetia Burney. She suggested Pluto after the Roman god of the underworld who could make himself invisible. It was perfect, but there was a problem from day one. Lowell's math said Planet X should be a giant, but this new dot, it was faint, terribly faint. As our technology improved, Pluto began to shrink in the eyes of science. In 1930, we thought it was as big as Earth. By 1948, new math suggested it was only as big as Mars. The 9th planet was getting smaller every time we looked at it. It was like a cosmic magic trick. The turning point came in 1978 with the discovery of Pluto's largest moon, Charon. This wasn't just a discovery, it was a revelation. Charon is so massive compared to Pluto, about half its size, that the two don't actually orbit each other in the traditional sense. Instead, They orbit a point in empty space between them, called a barycenter. By measuring this dance, we could finally weigh Pluto with absolute precision. The result was a scientific embarrassment. Pluto wasn't a giant. It was a tiny frozen pebble, smaller than our own moon. It possessed just 0.2% of the mass of Earth. It was nowhere near heavy enough to have caused the wobbles Lowell had seen in Uranus and Neptune. As it turned out, Lowell's math was wrong because his data was flawed. There was no ghost tugging at the planets. We had found Pluto by pure mathematical luck. In the 1990s, the darkness began to speak. Astronomers Dave Jewett and Jane Lu discovered the Kuiper Belt, a massive cosmic junkyard containing millions of icy fragments left over from the birth of the solar system. Pluto wasn't a lone sentinel. It was just the biggest kid in a very crowded playground. Then came 2005, the year the Pluto killer Mike Brown found Eris. It was further away, colder, and 27% more massive than Pluto. The logic was inescapable. If Pluto was a planet, then Eris had to be one. And if Eris was a planet, then the hundreds of other round objects we were finding, Sedna, Makemake, Haumea, would have to be planets too. We were looking at a solar system with 1,000 planets. The textbooks were about to become obsolete every single week. Something had to give. August 2006, Prague. The International Astronomical Union gathered for a cosmic trial. The mission defined once and for all what a planet actually is. Believe it or not, until this moment, science didn't actually have a formal legal definition for the word. The debate was fierce. It wasn't just science, it was emotional, bordering on political. On one side, the geophysicists argued that if it's round and complex, it's a planet. On the other, the dynamicists argued that a planet must be a gravitational boss. It must define its own neighborhood. That third rule was the executioner's axe. To clear the neighborhood, a planet must be the dominant force in its path. Earth is 1.7 million times more massive than the debris in its orbit. Pluto is only 0.07 times the mass of the objects it shares space with. It's not a king, it's a neighbor. But science doesn't care about labels. 9 years after the demotion, the New Horizons spacecraft finally reached the edge of the dark. We expected a dead cratered rock, a boring fossil of the early solar system. Instead, we found a world that was pulsing. We saw 11,000-foot mountains made of solid water ice soaring into a hazy blue atmosphere. But at Pluto's temperatures, water ice is as hard as steel. These are frozen skyscrapers. We saw vast plains of frozen nitrogen, like the Sputnik Planitia, that are actively churning. It's a process called convection, a planetary lava lamp where heat from deep inside causes the surface to breathe and renew itself.